I'm Jess, and today I'm thrilled to introduce you to an incredible designer who has been featured in our Bag Makers Club. Today you'll meet Celine of Blue Calla Patterns, and we'll chat about her design process, inspiration, and share a few tips for creating her beautiful patterns. Welcome to the SallieTomato YouTube channel. If you love bag making and want to connect with talented designers, this is a video you don't want to miss. You'll also learn some useful bag making tips and tricks. Tap that notification and subscribe button so you never miss an interview or bag sewing tips. Thank you so much for being here, Celine. Let's jump right in. I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself and your background.
Thanks for having me. I'm Celine from Blue Calla Patterns, and I am based out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I work in my home studio alone by myself, and I have been a sewing pattern designer for about 12 or 13 years now. And I have been a bag maker longer, of course, but just strictly designing sewing patterns has been 12 or 13 years. This is my second career. I was actually a website developer for about 12 years before I jumped into sewing.
Wow, that's a big career shift, but a lot more
It is.
creative.
It's not related at all.
And, well, I suppose though you could use your skills from web development for your own website now, and
It's definitely come in handy. So I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all.
for sure. Oh, well, that's very inspiring though, and good for you to follow your dream and to take that leap to design your own patterns. That's so exciting, and it's done so well.
It kind of happened by accident. It was not an intentional career switch. It was sort of just, sometimes in life, you go in a different direction and it just works out for you. So that's pretty much what happened.
So would you care to share a little bit, like what sparked that passion for bag making? Was it something that you always loved? I know you said you were bag making before your pattern business, or what kind of sparked that passion?
I actually started by sewing clothing for my kids. So while I was on mat leave, I'm not very good at just not doing anything and not working and not feeling productive. So while I was on maternity leave with my youngest, I started sewing little clothes I had two little ones at the time. And unfortunately, they really hated wearing anything that I made for them. And so I still wanted to sew. I really loved sewing. So I just started to dabble in simple things like tote bags and zipper pouches. And it really just took off from there. I just started buying and trying out patterns from different designers. And I found that I was getting bored very, very quickly with making the same thing over and over. And I did start getting requests to make bags for others. But I hated sewing the same thing over and over. I really need to learn something new every time I make something. So I started by altering patterns that I was using already, and then it just kind of went from there. I decided to just try writing my own patterns, and I also found a lot of the patterns that I were trying were just not useful enough. They didn't have enough pockets, or they didn't have any features that I really wanted in a bag. So that's pretty much how that started. And then I got so busy that I just never went back to my old job.
Oh, I feel like a lot of bag makers can relate to that too, with like
Yes.
all the fun materials and features, pockets, that you start getting all these ideas. And I think that's why we love bag making so much, the variety and the customization. And
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when I started, cotton bags were really popular at the time. And I mean, fabric is very beautiful. So it's easy to get addicted to the whole thing.
for sure, yes. So your patterns are so unique and detailed, and I'm always fascinated by the process that brings designs to life. So could you walk us through what your typical workflow is, or share what inspires your creativity? And I would love to hear if there's a story behind your pattern names too. I know that we have a story behind how we name our patterns, so I'm sure you do too.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, when I do, I often get asked to do talks, mostly at quilt guilds, and I always quiz everyone in the room, what do you notice about my pattern names? And I name all of my patterns after flowers because I'm pretty obsessed with gardening. I used to mostly garden flowers, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. So yes, if anybody in the room answers that question correctly, I usually give them like a little sewing kit or something as a prize.
Oh, fun.
But in terms of, I don't have a set process. I find like everything is changing all the time in the sewing world, trends, techniques, and everything that I don't really have a set design process. Um, I don't sit there and think, okay, this is what I have to do. I have to make a new pattern, and this is the kind of pattern I want to make. It just kind of happens by accident. So, either a friend or a family member will say, oh, I would really love a bag that does this. So then I usually design something for them, or, sometimes it's just something that I want. So I will design something that I know I'm going to use and really appreciate. And sometimes when I'm designing one pattern, it kind of inspires me to do something entirely different, but somewhat similar. So that's usually how I come up with my ideas. There's nothing really um, very interesting about it, I
Oh, no,
guess.
I love that. It just comes to you naturally in such an
Yeah,
authentic way.
yeah.
And I think that really shows through your patterns. And so
Well,
that's
I
really
used
neat
to
to hear.
maybe force it a little bit in the beginning because I felt this huge pressure to release constantly at a very set interval. But I don't have that anymore. So now more than ever, I just let it happen.
Yeah. No, I can definitely relate to that too because I'd get questions about, do you have a backpack pattern or, this style bag? And then I'd, yeah, feel a little pressured to like build that
Yes,
library. So yeah, but that's great. I love to hear
exactly.
that. That you can slow down a little bit and really take the time to design and
Yeah,
enjoy the
absolutely.
process. So now I'd like to talk about one of your new patterns, the Zabelia bag. And this pattern has captured so much attention and was featured in our Bag Makers Club. So why don't you share what your inspiration was behind this particular design and some of your favorite features and perhaps any tips. I know that's a lot
Yeah.
to cover, but I'd love to hear.
So the Zabelia, that would be one of those ideas that I designed for me selfishly because my kids are older now and I'm way past the stage of having to carry snacks and things like that for kids. So I just really need a really small bag, but I always have to have a lot of pockets. So that was my goal with Zabelia. Only carry crossbody. I only need a small bag, but I love a lot of pockets. So, I need to have, and I have weird things like I can't put my keys and my phone in the same pocket because I don't want to scratch my screen. So I just made sure
Yes.
though that on the exterior I had, my phone pocket, my key pocket. I mean, that's what it was. It was a selfish design. It was for me. It was for me. But I do think that right now, smaller bags, especially smaller crossbody bags, are really popular. So I think it just happened to be a hit because of that. Like it's just the most popular type of bag at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Certainly.
then
Yeah.
in terms of tips, the one tip I would have for Zabelia is the top zipper can be tricky, just the way that I do the installation. So you want to make sure that you're installing it the same on both sides at the top edge. So in the video, I really go over that and explain why you want to do that. So if anything, I would focus on that. The rest is pretty much like if you've made any of my patterns, I tend to reuse the same techniques over and over. So the top zipper is the one portion I would pay attention to if you really want a nice looking bag at the end.
Great. That's a really good tip. I'm currently in the process of making one for myself too. I was really excited because just like you had mentioned with the multiple pockets, and I my kids are older now that I don't need to carry a diaper bag. And so I'm really looking forward to using it as my everyday bag. I'm excited. So
I was not sad to let go of the diaper bag.
yeah, yeah.
This is a
Yes.
good small bag time of my life.
Yes. Now they each have their own bags, so they can carry their own
Oh,
little toys with them and snacks. We
perfect.
make sure they're packed before we leave. So
Perfect.
um, yeah. So looking back at your journey, is there something that you wish that someone would have told you when you started, or maybe a piece of advice or technique that would have made something easier for pattern designing and all that comes with being an
Um,
entrepreneur?
the only thing that I would say, I do wish, and I think after a few years of sewing, I think a lot of sewers might have this wish, is that I wish I hadn't bought so many supplies right at the very beginning, because I'm one of those really neat, tidy people, and I have so much fabric, and it gets overwhelming sometimes when you walk into the studio and you're just looking at all of that fabric, and I don't know that I will ever get to use it in my lifetime. So I wish a little bit from the very beginning that I had done a little bit more planning, figure out what projects I was going to make, and only buy what I need for those projects. It's okay to buy a little extra every once in a while, but we don't need to own all the bag hardware in the world. We just don't. We just, I wish I had been a little bit more practical. And there's been trends even with different tools in bag making. And for example, I bought a rivet press because everybody said you need to have a rivet press, and I didn't like it, and I sold it immediately.
Oh my
I
gosh.
know. I don't know why I don't like using a rivet press, which I know many bag makers would absolutely not understand whatsoever because they swear by it. But I don't enjoy using a rivet press. So I
Mhm.
did, at some point buy and use every single tool out there until I figured out that maybe I don't need all of them, because it can
Mhm.
get very expensive, and if you're limited on space like I am, I just don't have room for it. So I
Yeah.
like my workspace to feel very spacious and tidy and organized.
Yes. Yes. I think that's great advice because it can be overwhelming when you get all the supplies and don't have projects in mind,
Yeah,
and then when you do
absolutely.
find a project you want to make and you may not have what you need, and then you have more. So planning, I think, yeah, is critical, and
Yes,
that way you don't have this surplus because yeah, then your creative space just gets to be overwhelming and
it does. I find it makes me less creative if I walk into my studio and I'm just hit in the face with, 1,000 yards of fabric that I will probably never use.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's
Oh.
pretty. It's pretty. But
Yeah.
let's be honest, I will never use it.
Well, speaking of materials, I guess
Hmm.
what is your go-to fabric or material when creating bags, and what makes it your favorite?
Well, that has changed a lot throughout the years because I have been doing this for 12, 13. I have to figure out exactly how long. It's either 12 or 13 years. Um, I find there's been a lot of trends with materials and bag making, like everything else. It's normal. Um, I can't say that I enjoy working with one thing over another thing. I like again, I get bored easy, so I need a lot of variety, and that includes the type of materials that I'm going to be working with. I do really like working with faux leather. And my latest favorite is definitely waterproof canvas for linings. The fact that I do not have to interface,
Yes.
that's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
I really don't like spending all that time interfacing, which I think a lot of bag makers will agree with. So I think waterproof canvas, and now the waterproof canvas comes in so many beautiful prints and everything. I don't think I'll ever do a cotton lining again unless somebody specifically asks me. It's not going to happen again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's such a great tip because sometimes when I'm making bags for myself, I'll skip the interfacing just because I know that, I'm trying to work on my project and move it along a little quicker. But then once it's done, then I really wish I would have put that in. So taking the time to, select the appropriate lining or add the interfacing, it does make a difference in the end. So I think that's a really good tip for sure. So I know that many of us love having something in the background while we sew. Are you a music fan, or do you listen to podcasts, have a movie going? I guess what kind of keeps you company in your sewing space?
Oh, well, my husband would have a lot to say about this
Oh,
because he does find me a little odd in this area. I do watch a lot of shows, usually Netflix or whatever. I don't watch anything at all when I'm in the writing phase. Like when I'm writing the instructions for my patterns, I have to really focus because French is my first language, and so writing English, writing English instructions is not extremely easy for me at times. So I really have to focus. I don't watch anything when I'm writing, but when I'm just straight out sewing, I do watch a lot of crime shows. I mean, I think that's
yeah.
pretty common. I
Yes,
don't know
it
why.
actually is. Yes.
It's very, very common. So, yeah, I'm like everyone else. That's usually what I watch. And I do like a lot of documentaries, crime shows, anything where there's a crime to solve or a mystery to solve. I love it.
Yeah, that's fun to listen to.
It is,
Yeah.
yes.
Recently I've had audiobooks on in the background, but then, yeah, usually I need to focus on either if I'm writing a new pattern or working on a pattern that I'm unfamiliar with, then it's usually music in the background. But it seems like every creative journey has pivotal moments. And are there any specific experiences? I know you kind of covered this earlier, or milestones that you want to share that shaped you as a designer?
I don't think there's anything specifically that shaped me as a designer. I think, through the years, everyone changes. They change their way of thinking, their way of working. I think that's a normal part of life. So there was nothing ever that really changed me. I did become very, very busy at 2 points. The first one was when I joined Bag of the Month Club as a designer. So that I became very busy at that time. And so my following on social media really increased at that time. And then the second thing was COVID. I had been dabbling a little bit in selling supplies before COVID, but when COVID hit, I really expanded what I was selling, especially to obviously to Canadians, because at the time there were not a lot of sewing supply retailers online. Now, of course, there are many, but at the time there wasn't a lot. So those would be the two things that really changed me. But now I'm trying to reduce the amount of supplies that I sell and get back to sewing again because I feel like I sort of lost touch with actual sewing and I didn't enjoy my job as much. So now I'm trying to go back to um, focusing on designing patterns and yeah, just sewing for fun too. I had stopped sewing completely. It's crazy.
I know. Well, yeah, honestly, it's interesting that you mentioned that. I just wrote about this in our last newsletter that, I really took some time to focus on like what mattered to me, and I started sewing again, like personally,
Yeah,
since a long time, and it's been really exciting and relaxing, and it's like fresh perspective. So I'm excited that you're going on that path too, and getting back to sewing and
absolutely.
enjoying it. So that's great
Yeah,
to hear.
absolutely. It's important to get back to what made you start this
Yes.
job in the first place
Mm-hmm. Yes.
because I totally lost touch with it for a while.
Ah, yeah, it's hard.
It is. It is.
So,
Life gets busy and you forget.
yeah, for sure. So let's step away from the sewing table for a moment. And I'm curious, when you're not designing or sewing, then how do you like to spend your free time?
Well, obviously, I like to garden. I would say that I'm pretty obsessed with gardening. I used to just focus on, I had a beautiful perennial flower garden. at our last home, but we moved 4 years ago to this new home, and the backyard was gigantic. So now I have a huge vegetable garden.
Oh, amazing.
I still have flower garden, but I'm really obsessed with growing vegetables, and I really like the challenge of trying to grow something that is notoriously difficult to grow, especially in our climate. It's probably, well, I think we have the similar climate between Toronto and Chicago. I think it's very similar, but I really like to grow things that are very challenging. Right now, I'm trying to germinate flowers that are ridiculous. They need like 16 hours of light to germinate. So I like that challenge.
Oh, cool. Oh, my mom has a green thumb and she's been trying to get me into gardening, and my kids are really into gardening. So I tell her maybe just now isn't the right time, but I'm optimistic that I want to pick it up someday. So
You know what? I highly recommend it because it's really, really good for your mental health. I don't
yeah.
know, I can't explain what it is. Apparently, there's something about when you touch soil that it releases
Mm,
things, chemicals in your brain that make you
mm-hmm,
happy. So I
mm-hmm.
highly recommend it.
Oh, well, we'll see. This spring is hopefully
It's
on the
coming.
way, and who knows?
It doesn't feel like it right now, but it
I
will.
know. Oh, cool. So is there anything on your wish list for 2025 that you're planning on trying or exploring? I don't want you to give away anything, but for your plans for the year, but it's a great time for goal setting. And if you have anything on the horizon, feel free to share.
I don't actually for sewing. Like I said earlier, I just really want to get back to actually sewing because I think in order to learn new things and show others new techniques or whatever, you have to actually do it. So this year, I'm really going to make an effort to get back to sewing. And I think I'm going to focus a little bit more on producing more video content and just try different things in that area. I
Sure.
don't know, I don't have a specific plan yet, but that is something that I'm really considering for now.
Oh, how exciting. Well, your YouTube channel is growing, and the
Yeah, I
tutorials
honestly I
will
don't
be
pay
so helpful.
attention. I really do. I don't pay attention, and then someone will ask me, and I'll be like, "Oh, let me check."
Oh.
I don't pay attention to any of my social media numbers or anything until someone asks me to,
Yeah.
and then I'll check.
You're more focused on the patterns and sewing and all that. So,
Yeah, I think it's because I'm not a huge fan of social media. And so it's not a priority for me. I understand it's a must. I understand it's necessary, but I don't love it, so I don't really devote as much time to it as I probably should.
I think that goes back to it just comes, kind of naturally and organically when you feel like it's the right time to post. And I think that's a
Yeah,
great option as well. And, I think the followers enjoy that too. And it's not,
yeah.
as busy of a page. It's all comes from your heart. So,
And I think that now everyone really wants to see what you're doing. What are you sewing? What are you making? Like
yeah.
I think everyone really enjoys that as opposed to just always trying to sell them something.
Well, I guess speaking of all of that, my final question is where can everybody explore your patterns and connect with you online if you just want to share your website and,
Sure.
yeah, how they can connect with you?
Um, so only have a website now. I used to be on Etsy, but it was too much managing Etsy and my website. So I just have my website, which is bluecallapatterns.com. And then I also have an Instagram account that's also Blue Calla Patterns. I try to keep everything simple. And then I am on Facebook. I do have a page, which I think is just facebook.com/Blue Calla Patterns. And I do have a group as well on Facebook. I can't remember what that link is, but if you go to my website under support, I think there's a link to my Facebook group on my website. I
Okay.
don't have any other accounts, no TikToks, nothing like that.
Okay,
because
okay.
again, I don't really like it.
Yeah, it's a lot to maintain. So,
It's too much for one person to maintain and also do everything else that needs to be done. And I still fill orders every day, so I have to choose where I want to, devote my energy.
well, for everybody watching, definitely go and check out Celine online. Thank you so much, Celine, for sharing your journey, your tips, and
My
inspiration.
pleasure.
And it was truly a pleasure to chat. Thank you so much for your time
Yes.
today.
It was very nice to meet you.
You as well. Thank you for tuning into today's interview. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Celine and learning about her design journey. If you're inspired to make something from her collection, you can find her at bluecallapatterns.com. And don't forget to check out our Bag Makers Club to receive kits and everything you need to create your next bag project. We would love to see your projects made from the Bag Makers Club. Please share your photos with us using the hashtag BagMakersClub and hashtag SallieTomato on social media so we can celebrate your creativity. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss any of the future videos we have planned with some amazing designers. I'll see you next time.